Senator Heitkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. It's really quite an honor to be here, and I'm grateful for the invitation, grateful for the opportunity. I want to kind of start out where Maria left off, and I want to assure the senator from Washington that where we may see it differently because we're producing, but you're refining Bakken crude in your state, and we all are concerned about safety. This is not a trade-off of economics versus safety. We have to make the transportation of this material as safe as what is humanly possible on the rails. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Now, Mr. Hart, I want to go back to one of your comments because we have focused a lot on the 111s. And, you know, I'm always amused when people say 40%. I think the more important question that we have is how many of the 111s have been retired? You know, if you look at the 111s transporting this material, obviously as you're growing the fleet, which you have to in order to meet the demand of transporting, of course you're going to have a lower percentage of 111s on the rail. But the concern is getting the 111s off, and Mr. Hart, I think following on that track, you also said that you think the 1232s are deficient, if I heard your testimony correctly. And so I want you to reaffirm that, and then I want to hear from both the American Railroad Association and from API on what their reaction is to that, and we can talk about the regulation after that.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I did say that the 1232s are still not adequate. As I mentioned, we're having a tank car forum next month that we'll talk about not only the rail cars, but a variety of other issues that are associated with this, the operations, the emergency response. But we hope that in the PHMSA rulemaking, we hope that will inform that
I only
process.
have so much time, so I really want to just focus on getting a kind of an immediate reaction to the comment about the 1232s. Yeah.
On behalf of the AR, we filed comments at PHMSA in the ANPRM recommending that new tank cars be built exceeding the 1232. We are requesting that they require the full height head shields, the jacket, thermal protection, top fitting protection, high capacity pressure relief valve. So we think that the 1232 was a big step above the DOT 111s. Knowing what we do now about some of the volatility of some of the crude moving, we think we need to go even beyond the 1232s.
Interested in API's response.
Yeah, thank you. I think the information that has been that AAR is referring to has not been shared that substantiates the benefit of these improvements. We are, you know, you're starting to get down into a very narrow range of improvement, and you go from a very small number to an even smaller number, and so we would look forward to having those discussions on that. However, I would say that the 1232, again, was studied for 3 years. It actually was studied for 2 years, and then another third year was taken to review how sufficient that performance specification would be.
So this is shaping up as a regulatory fight here, obviously, and it appears that PHMSA and FRA are moving in the direction of the American Railroad Association in terms of recommendations on the tank cars. I think it's doubtful they're going, as she said already, she thinks the 1232s are deficient. That's why they didn't go through the process back when you guys requested their weighing in on improving the tank car. This is very problematic from a public standpoint because the public expects that we're going to make decisions and they're going to be fact-based. Now, we have not had a major derailment that involved the 1232s. We've obviously had major derailments that involved the 111s, and I only have 42 seconds. So I'd like to ask Mr. Searles, how many 111s have been taken off the train?
The 111s continue to be the tank car that was provided by in the regulations.
So we need to be careful when we say, you know, 40% and it's going to be less, because it doesn't mean we've taken these cars off the trains. It just means that we've grown the fleet to the point that their percentage involvement is dwindling, correct?
The numbers indicate that we are moving in a direction that will bring us to these safer tank cars.
But as of today, there hasn't been any major movement of 111s off the rails.
Not to my knowledge.
Just quickly, you know, this really fits in kind of three categories for me. Number one, prevention of derailments. Second category is mitigating the consequences of derailments, and then making sure that in the third category that we have, in fact, trained professionals who respond to these crises. And I want to just briefly hit each one. I was surprised, Mr. Sabo, that you didn't talk about technology very much when you were asked, because I think technology is such that you could, in fact, inspect that track every time a train went over the track. And so, you know, I just want to lay that, I don't have a lot of time, so I just want to lay that marker down that we're interested in the relationship that you have with the American Railroad Association, so we make sure we get that technology deployed. In the category of mitigation, I think, you know, with all due respect, PHMSA doesn't have a very good record on this, and I know you said you're moving with all due diligence, but that's not the past history on this. I think there was a lack of engagement. In fact, Senator Hoeven, along with Senator Landrieu, sent a letter in December of 2012 asking where that collaboration was, where that discussion was. Now we're here in crisis almost, trying to resolve this issue, and I think it's a lesson for all of us to respond and react. Finally, I want to talk about classification. There hasn't been a lot of talk about how this product gets classified, except the chairman raised this. I want to ask Ms. Korteman, taking a look at the range of violations, would it have changed how any of that product was actually shipped? It may have changed how people respond to it if there's crisis, and I recognize the need to know exactly what that is for the first responders, but would it have changed how they ship that product?
I don't have a list of each of the violations that are listed there, but we're talking here about cargo tanks, which are trucks on the highway, and there are differences between the tanks that are used for packing group 1 packages and packing group 2 packages.
I just
so,
want to focus
yes.
on the railroad. I want to focus on the rails.
Once it went to a rail, whether it would have made a difference if the packing group were wrong. I don't know what the number was at that time. Packing group 1 and packing group 2 are very similar.
In terms of the requirement
In
on how
terms
they
of the
ship.
requirement.
So we just want to make sure that we're laying down the understanding that these classifications are relevant and important and must be met, but they may not change, in fact, how that product moves under current regulation. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about classification, because in my discussions with API and with PHMSA, you know, this is facts. I mean, what actually is in the tank or what gets produced, it's chemically provable. But yet we have all of this disagreement about what is this product? And I know that API has come up with a pretty extensive outline on process in terms of studying this and getting to the point. And I know you're currently moving. Are you guys communicating? Are you giving us what we need in terms of a process so the public can be guaranteed it's moving forward appropriately? API.
Yes, thank you. We indeed are moving forward with development of a standard that looks at classification of crude oil, and what it does is look at all of the aspects that need to be resolved. There have been several questions that have come from PHMSA, and we're addressing those and any other questions that come up during those meetings. So that is a group of scientists and engineers and railroads, and PHMSA will be participating in those meetings. In fact, they had somebody at the last meeting.
So we're building consensus on how we're going to test this or what the standards are going to be, Ms. Korteman?
API has stepped forward to put together a standards creation body. We are participating on that body. We have, since we last met with Secretary Fox, we have had a series of meetings with crude oil representatives, including API, but also individual shippers, to ask them what are the characteristics of the crude. And I've had a series of conversations over the past month with individual companies. Some are providing information on that, and we have told them what we know about the crude so far. And, you know, we did probably as many tests last week as we had in the period before, so we will have a lot more information after we get the results from that.
I think this is headed in the right direction.